Welcome to the Cedar Creek Bible in a Year podcast. Whether you are listening on your own, with a friend, or a group of friends, we hope this podcast helps you connect with Scripture and also enriches your relationship with God. Here are your hosts, Luke Shortridge and Andy Rechtenwald.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Cedar Creek Radio. We are back. This is the Bible in a Year podcast. We are going to be discussing Daniel today. I am here with my co-host, Andy Rechtenwald. Andy, how are you doing today?
Great as always, Luke. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Andy, I got a question for you.
Sure.
What is your power animal?
What?
What's your power animal?
What's that mean?
Have you ever seen Fight Club?
Yeah.
So this is like the animal that represents your strength, your spirit. You know, the Native Americans,
Okay,
they would go on a walkabout, I think they called it. Maybe not. Maybe that's Aborigines. And they would, go out in wilderness and they would find an animal that represented them. That was their power animal. So in Fight Club, it was a penguin, if you remember.
No, I don't remember that, honestly.
Okay. So if you had to pick an animal that represents you, what would it be?
Off the top of my head, I don't know why I thought it was like a spider monkey.
Why a spider monkey?
I like monkeys, man. I feel like, people tell me to do stuff, I do it. It's kind of like a monkey, you know what I'm saying?
What? Monkeys don't do it, you tell them?
Kinda.
No.
Dance, monkey dance, you ever heard that before?
They don't listen.
Yeah.
They're
Okay, so
jerks.
what about you? What's your thing? What's it, the power animal
My
or something
power animal
like that?
is an eagle.
An eagle?
Yeah, for
Why is that?
America.
Just because for America?
Yeah.
I respect that.
Okay. So today we are talking about a very specific animal. We're talking about lions.
Okay.
So I thought for our opener today we would do a little bit of lion trivia.
Oh, good.
Here's the deal, though. For each one, I'm going to read a statement, which is either true or false.
Okay.
If it is false, you need to answer lion crap, because if you wouldn't say bull crap. We're talking about lions.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or you have to let us know if it's the roaring truth, and by doing that, you need to roar.
Okay. Yeah,
so
sure.
let out a
That's
roar.
normal, so we'll do that.
All right, let's just jump right in.
Okay.
Okay, first statement. Mature male lions are unique among big cats due to the thick brown or black mane that encircle their necks to protect them while fighting.
Roar.
You can't say roar. You gotta roar. Okay, you're correct, sir. Okay, next up. We're moving right along. The lion population in Africa has been reduced by half since the early 1950s. Today, fewer than 10,000 lions remain in all of Africa.
Lion crap.
You are correct again. The actual number there is 21,000. Still
A lot of
not great.
lions. Oh, not great. Okay.
Okay. The Latin name for the African lion is Panthera leo.
Roar.
Correct again. Nice
Look at
job.
that.
That was
Yeah.
a better roar.
I
You're
thought
making a
about
real
it.
improvement here.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get better at things.
Historically, in addition to Africa, lions were found from Greece through the Middle East to northern India. Today, they are found mostly in the southern Sahara Desert and parts of southern and eastern Africa.
Roar.
That was a worse roar, but you are correct again.
Yes.
You are on a roll here. Okay, here we go. Lions typically have a lifespan of 20 to 25 years.
Lion crap.
Man, you are on it again. You have to think about it. You
No.
really know your lions. Have you been watching National Geographic in preparation for
No,
this
I don't get
episode?
cable, so
Well.
I don't have that. Or Dish.
Ooh.
I watch like 3 things.
How
Okay.
do you live, man?
Hell's Kitchen, Master Chef, and any other Gordon Ramsay show.
Good. I appreciate your life choices right now. Under the reign of the Roman Emperor Nero, Christians were forced to face gladiators while unarmed, thrown to starved lions who ripped them from limb to limb, and they were lit as human torches to light up Nero's gardens at his golden house. True or false?
Roar. With exception, I mean, that's what people talk about. We're not entirely sure that that's exactly what happened, but that is the common known fact.
Yeah, it's correct.
Yeah.
It's correct. Wikipedia told me it was correct.
Yeah.
So, okay. Next question. At short distances, lions can run up to 50 miles an hour faster than a speeding moped. I'm thinking about your moped of thunder here.
50 miles an hour. I wish I had a moped of thunder. Save me a lot on gas money.
Need an answer.
50 miles an hour? Bull crap. Lion crap. Lion crap.
Oh,
I
that
missed
is
it.
incorrect.
Dang
You
it.
mist your first one. Heck yeah, they can run 50 miles an hour. That is
damn it,
nothing for the king of the jungle. Okay, next question. Male lions do most of the hunting. They are nocturnal, stalking their
Lion
prey.
crap,
Oh, you're
lion
right.
crap.
Oh, man. I tried to sneak
Watch
it in
The
there.
Lion King. It'll tell
Dang
you.
it.
The women
All right.
do the hunting.
Next up, the gestation period for lions is just short of 4 months, and typically a litter of cubs is 3 to 4.
Roar.
You're right. Good
Yeah.
job.
I had to think about that
Okay,
one.
last question, and the most important question of all of them. The Detroit Lions have won the NFL championship 4 times.
Oh, gosh. If there's one city... Never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Careful.
Lion crap.
It's absolutely true. They've never been to a Super Bowl, but they won the NFL championship in 1935, 1952, 1953, and 1957.
Been a long time then, huh?
Well, if 60 years is a long time for you, I guess. I mean, that's nothing in the span of eternity, so
It's true. That's
it's
very
not,
true.
not really been that long.
Yeah.
All
sure.
right. Well,
That was fun.
That was a good time. Andy, tell us a little bit about the book of Daniel. What do you got for us?
Well, the purpose of the book is to give us, the readers, a historical account of the Jews who lived under Babylonian captivity, especially the faithful ones, and that's where Daniel comes in. He's the main character, obviously, of the book, and his faith in the midst of all of the... he's under captivity. They're trying to teach him to be somebody he's not. We'll get into that later.
Yep.
That's pretty much the purpose of the book, and also to show that God cares for his people and that he is sovereign over all circumstances and over all kingdoms of the earth.
Cool. Yeah, the book of Daniel is very interesting. There's a lot of history, so it tells kind of stories, the beginning part. Then it gets into some prophecy.
Yeah.
Some of the language in that prophecy is used by Jesus himself.
Yep.
It was also a little bit later in the period of the prophets. Probably it was written somewhere around 536 BC. So this is one of the last books written in the Old Testament, but a really fascinating, interesting book. There's also some very... how should I say it, famous stories from this book
definitely.
that are, talked about, known about. I can remember being a child in Sunday school and hearing about Daniel in the Lion's Den. I think that's pretty much like staple children's
Right.
story.
Yep.
But also Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego,
Yep.
the three homies
The
chilling
three
in the
homies.
fire. Yeah.
I like
Maybe
it.
there's a fourth in there. Who knows? We'll get to that. So we'll see. All right. So Andy, tell us a little bit about the key people.
Key people of the book, obviously we already said Daniel. He's the main character. He began serving at a young age, and throughout his entire life, really, he remained faithful to God. He prayed a lot, and he had convictions that he wasn't necessarily super public about, but you'll see that his private convictions were the things that got him in trouble, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Then we have the king for a good portion of it, or I guess the first third of the
The
book.
Babylonian king. He's got a crazy name.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite stories, personal stories of the Bible, about a person, because it's just crazy. You get to see a guy who's so high up in a kingdom, and I'm not going to give away the rest. Something happens in his life. It's super cool. So we'll get to that.
Not cool for him, but
Yeah, but for us to read, it's super cool.
absolutely. And then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which we talked about. If you've ever watched VeggieTales, you know exactly who they are. It's a classic VeggieTale. Don't look at me like that.
I've seen 2 of them,
Well,
maybe.
Ruby's young. She will grow.
Okay,
And she will love VeggieTales.
VeggieTales.
And then you'll be all about this one.
maybe.
Trust me.
Okay.
All right. Some of the mega themes in our book, courage, really is the
it's
mark of
huge.
trust in God. Being able to face death, if that's what it takes, to stand up for your faith. Also, obedience, choosing to obey God over choosing to obey people.
Even really powerful people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People that have control over you. I think, too, that the book shows that wherever human law contradicts God's law, you've got to pick God's law.
Yep.
And doesn't mean that in the short term, things are always going to work out great by doing that. But I think that God is in control, even when it seems like the situation is getting out of control. And we'll see his salvation played out dramatically in this book.
Yeah.
Spiritual discipline is also a major theme that we will see. What does it mean to live a life of godliness, especially in an ungodly environment? What does it mean to be a person of prayer, to be disciplined? all of those are really important aspects to Daniel and to also some of the other people that we see in this book.
Sure. So there's a couple different ways you can split up the key events in Daniel, but really easy ways to go. Chapters 1 through 6 are his experiences in exile, and then 7 through 12 are what we mentioned earlier, his visions that he gets. A lot of which are there's some apocalyptic visions and that kind of stuff, but that's the easiest way I think to split up the book.
Cool. We mentioned it in an earlier podcast, but this idea of exile, kind of what's going on in the period of Israel's history is they have been captured.
Yeah.
They've been ransacked. The Babylonians took a bunch of the young men and forced them to be Babylonian. Mm-hmm. So Daniel is in that grouping. So he has been taken from his homeland as a young child. He's been put into service for the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, and he is being trained to live a Babylonian lifestyle, even though he is Jewish, and he has a great sense of who God is and who he really is.
Yeah, it even go as far as to change their names. So Daniel is his
name, language.
Yep.
Yeah, and also, too, you see in the book of Daniel, most of it is written in Aramaic, not in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Because the language of the Hebrews was starting to be lost, and they were really, as they were taken over by another tribe, kind of who they were was in jeopardy. So you do see some other languages that are used, especially in the prophecy and later on in the book.
Definitely. So every week, guys, we want you to kind of come alongside of us in a journey through a book, and we want you guys to dive into God's Word with us. We cannot cover every single story in the book, not even close. So we recommend that you go back, read the whole book on your own after the podcast is finished. We're going to be in the NLT version. If you want to follow along, I would suggest pull out your Bible, or if you have a smartphone, you want to get a Bible app, pull that out as long as you're not driving. We're going to be asking some questions. So if you're with a group, you want to pause the podcast and answer those questions together, or if you're on your own, we'd suggest you get something out to write on, answer the questions in a journal or something. It would give you a great opportunity to learn something and to really retain what we talk about here in the podcast.
Very cool. So Daniel is captured along with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, some of the other young Hebrew youth. The king orders that strong, healthy-looking young men be brought up in the ways of Babylon. So they are living in the palace. They are in service to the king, and that's where we kind of first begin here. So we're in Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat the unacceptable foods. Now God had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. But he responded, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has ordered that you eat this food and wine. If you become pale and thin compared to the other youths your age, I am afraid that the king will have me beheaded. Daniel spoke with the attendant who had been appointed by the chief of staff to look after Daniel. Okay, here we go with the names. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Please test us for 10 days on the diet of the vegetables and water, Daniel said. At the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's food. Then make your decision in light of what you see. The attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of the food and wine provided for the others. So, Andy, what's going on here? This is kind of where, if you've heard of the Daniel fast, that comes from this passage. What is the conflict of interest that Daniel is feeling here? Why didn't he want to eat from the king's table?
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on here. A lot of people, when you study the ancient Near East culture, you'll see that with places like Babylon, they would sacrifice food to different gods, and so there's that theological tension. Daniel's feeling like, I'm not going to eat food that is specifically set aside for a false god, and so he is going to stand up for his faith and say, I'm not going to do that, so I'll eat things that are not set aside for that. So that meant no meat, pretty much. He's eating vegetables and water.
Right.
And then he had the trust in
Paul
God.
talks about this in the New Testament because there was disagreements among the Christians. Is this meat sacrificed to idols okay to eat or not? Paul says yes. He says, we know there's no other gods but the real God, but newer Christians may have their consciences pricked because of it, and they may feel bad about it. So because of that, he says, just for the sake of peace and unity, don't do it.
Yeah, and that's where you see, this is a conviction of Daniel's. Would it have been wrong for him to eat meat sacrificed to some fake god? According to Paul, probably not. But at the same time, he's setting an example for the other Hebrew guys that were picked up. And
he also, too, had to keep kosher. I mean, that was part of
that's
retaining
true.
his
Totally
Jewishness
different.
was there were animals that were defiled that he was not supposed
allowed
to
to eat,
eat.
yeah.
He may not have known. You know, if you're on the same table, if you have pork and shellfish and other things you know you're not supposed to eat, and it's all mixed together,
Right.
he may have just said, you know what, it's all defiled. I can't do
eat
this
it.
in good conscience. And for him, then it would have been a sin if he would have
Sure.
went forward.
Yeah, so the question we have for you guys is Daniel was determined to follow God's laws, even if it put him at odds with his current culture. What biblical law do you hold to that your non-church friends think is kind of weird? What has the conversation with them been like? Well, I know for me, when I first started dating my wife now, my friends were really weirded out that we were not going to have sex before marriage, like to the point where her friends were ridiculing her at work and making fun of her. My friends just thought I was a moron. And the conversations were really interesting because they just could not see the point. And I would point out to them statistics of failed marriages and that kind of stuff and say, like, I'm trying to set myself up for success. Plus, I want to honor God with my relationship. And it's just, to them, it's so foreign. It was so foreign to them. And it was to me before I was a Christian, you know, that you would not do that before marriage. So that's one example for me.
That's funny. My mind went to the same thing. I remember when I was getting married, I had a friend of mine who said he was just shocked that not only were we not sleeping together, but we weren't living together. And
Yeah.
his rationale was you would never buy a car without test driving it. You know, it's like, I don't understand why we compare our wives to cars. You know, like, oh, I don't like the noise that it makes when it turns left or something. I'm not going to buy this car. So it's so funny, like, have a conversation, you know, get to know the person. There's
Right.
more important things. I don't know. People just don't get it. You know, the Bible says that the gospel is foolishness to those who are perishing.
Yeah.
If you are living for Christ, people are just not going to understand your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand your priorities, your values that are structured as such. I think, though, that when Daniel was a man of conviction, when he was a person that said, you know what, this is what God has called me to do and I'm going to follow it, it, number one, stood out. And number two, I think God blessed him for that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you see here that he became even more healthy. I've seen some Christians that will gravitate to the Daniel plan. Okay, we should eat all natural things, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying that's wrong, but you got to understand in this story, it was a miracle that these guys were eating vegetables and water, and they became more healthy than the guys who were eating everything. I think God was blessing their faithfulness in it. So it was a little bit of a unique circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not willing to build a whole theology off of one sentence.
We're moving on. We're going to be in Daniel chapter 2, verses 27 through 28. And just before this happens, the king is looking for his dreams to be interpreted, and people aren't able to do it. And so Daniel is called on to do that. So here's what it says. Daniel replied, "There are no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or fortune tellers who can reveal the king's secret. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the future. Now I will tell you your dream and the visions you saw as you lay on your bed." So then Daniel explains the dream. A large statue with all different kinds of metal from top to bottom, strongest metals on top. Then a boulder was cut from the mountain. It smashes the statues to bits. And then Daniel predicts that each metal represents a coming kingdom. Then he says in verses 44 and 45, "During the reigns of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed or conquered. It will crush all these kingdoms into nothingness, and it will stand forever. That is the meaning of the rock cut from the mountain, though not by human hands, that crushed to pieces the statue of iron, bronze, clay, silver, and gold. The great God was showing the king what will happen in the future. The dream is true, and its meaning is certain."
Cool. So, interesting. The king has a dream. He won't tell anyone what the dream is.
Yeah.
So, to interpret his dream, he says, "Tell me what the dream is, then tell me what it means." I see a lot of parallels with Daniel and Joseph. You know,
Sure,
both were
yeah.
interpreters of dreams. Both had somebody. In Joseph's case, it was Pharaoh. In this case, it was the king. Someone in a high power has a dream, disturbs them. At least Pharaoh, though, told people what the dream was. They still
Right.
couldn't interpret it. But King Nebuchadnezzar says, "No, tell me what the dream is." So Daniel does. God is helping him supernaturally. But what's interesting here, in Joseph's case, the dream was beneficial to the king. There was going to be a famine, but there was also
Yeah, it helped
going to
him.
be
Yeah.
it helped him. Here, the dream did not help King Nebuchadnezzar at all. His kingdom is about to be destroyed.
Yeah, and there's going to be some better ones coming.
Right. But the king responds positively.
Yeah.
He's like, cool, you figured it out. Thanks. Even though it's horrible news for him. But he's still pumped about it.
Sure.
So here's our question. God's kingdom will never be destroyed, and his plan is perfect. How does knowing this give you confidence in God, and how does it affect your faith? I have days, I don't know if you're the same way, Andy, where I watch the news, I see the things happening in the world, and I just feel powerless.
Yep.
I just feel like there's so much evil. A few weeks ago, and this made national news, obviously, there was a reporter, she's interviewing another lady. A guy just out of nowhere opens fire. I think he fired 18 shots and kills the reporter, kills the cameraman, wounds the person doing the interview. He tweets this thing, so he tapes himself, tweets it, I just did something stupid. He was angry, he was an ex-employee, whatever. A couple hours later, cops find him, and he takes his own life. All of this plays out kind of on a national stage.
Right.
And when I see things like this, I just think this world is so broken, so miserable, and evil is so prevalent, and it permeates everything that we see and do. And there's times where I just feel so powerless. Like, what can I really do to help in the big issues that this country is facing, that this world is facing?
Definitely.
And the truth is, I mean, you can pray. I don't mean to downplay prayer. I think that's a very real responsibility that we have. But the truth is, until Christ comes back and starts redeeming things, it's not going to get a ton better.
Right.
I mean, there's pockets of redemption all over the place that I see. But the reality is that this world is perishing. This world is not going to just all of a sudden get better, and people are going to follow God and start to say, okay, God, we'll all go your way. Some people do. The church certainly does. But until Christ comes back and redeems all things and make things all new, make things completely new, there's just going to be a lot of evil around. Yeah,
I think for me, I think a lot about especially with a 8-month-old, I think a lot about what's been going on for years, for decades in our country with the abortions that have been happening, and that's something that really weighs heavily on my heart. And I spend a lot of time in prayer every morning. I mean, I just ask God to change the circumstances, to fix things. And I think obviously there's the free will that we have as people that causes so much evil. And I think the faith portion of this, because the question asked, how does it affect your faith? When we can look at the world and we can think as people that we can fix the problem, we're missing the point. And I'm not saying we shouldn't try to actively do things, talk about the issues, vote a certain way to affect how things work in our country, or at least our world. We should do those things, but to expect the world to be good and to fix all these problems, we're the ones that cause it. People are the problem.
Right.
So people aren't going to be able to fix it. It has to be God. So it gives me a sense of awe to stand and go, God, you're in control. And for right now, this stuff is happening. But like you said, we have a hope that when Christ comes back, he's going to redeem all things to himself. And then we'll get to be in heaven with him, and there'll be no evil. And that, to me, it's amazing.
I have some friends who are pretty involved in local politics, which I think is awesome.
Sure.
But I see that, and these are non-Christians primarily, that their kind of salvation is activism. They think that by going out and by, we'll start small, we'll make an impact locally, and then that will grow and grow.
Yeah.
The problem, as you said, is people. The problem is that, you can do good, and we should do good, but you will never fix the world's problems through politics, through activism.
No.
By setting a good example. Should we do these things? Yes. But the truth is, it's in God's hands.
Right.
It's his to redeem. It's his to fix. So I think that as Christ followers, if we want to make a change in the world and we want to make the world a better place, show Christ through your life. Lead people to him. Make the teachings of Jesus attractive and how you live every day, and let him do the heavy lifting.
Right. I agree.
Cool. So very ironic, this dream happens where there's this statue that's going to be smashed. King Nebuchadnezzar gets the dream interpreted as he wants, and it's not good for him. So what does he do? Creates a 90-foot golden statue that everybody needs to worship.
Yep.
It's so ironic.
It's
like,
it's so weird.
okay, that's a prophecy. Okay, great. Now I'm going to do whatever I want anyway.
And
So,
it's a crazy prophecy too. If you look at, those of you listening, look into the nations that he's talking about, and he's identifying certain nations, and all of what he talks about happens. It's historically great. It's so cool. But anyways, we're moving on to Daniel 3.
cool. Yeah, another podcast, another time.
Yeah, whatever.
So at the sound of music being played, all these different instruments play, the people had to bow down and worship this golden statue that the king has created. 3 dudes, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse. Their punishment then is to be thrown into a blazing, fiery furnace, and that's where our story picks up. So we're at Daniel 3. We're going to read 17 through 18, and then we'll jump ahead a bit. So they say, if we are thrown into a blazing furnace, then God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we will make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up. The king is not happy.
Yep.
He's pretty ticked off at their defiance. So verse 21 picks it up. It says, so they tied them up, they being the guards, and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because of the king and his anger had demanded that such a hot fire be in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? Yes, your majesty, we certainly did, they replied. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see 4 men unbounded walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god. Another possibility of the translation of that is the Son of God. I think the Greek translation, the Septuagint, says Son of God there. So this is fascinating on a few different levels.
Yeah.
Theologians have put a lot of time into trying to figure out who is this 4th man.
Yeah.
Andy, what do you think? What's going on here?
Now, for me, I love to think. I try to think as logically as possible with these kind of things because I don't want to jump to conclusions.
Yep.
From what I've looked at, it's either 2 things. It's either an angel or it's Jesus.
Okay.
Now, what you see in the Old Testament, typically when they say the angel of the Lord, that refers to what we call a Christophany, which is an appearance of Jesus prior to his incarnation into the world. So I like to think that it's Jesus walking around with them because I think that's cool, and I don't think I would be theologically inaccurate in stating that, but at the same time, it could definitely be an angel. But I like to think that it's Jesus because I just love seeing Jesus in the Old Testament.
I'm with you. Yeah, I agree. I think especially when you take the entire context of Scripture, we know that Jesus himself is eternal. He was part of the creation process. He was not a created being. So Jesus is alive at this point, even though he hasn't been born.
Right.
I agree. I think it was either the angel of the Lord or it was Christ himself before he was born.
Yeah.
Regardless, we could spend all day kind of, is he the Son of God or is he a God? What's going on here?
Yeah.
God's in control by the fact that they're not burned up as they should have been. The soldiers are killed throwing them in, but they are unbounded. In fact, their clothes don't even smell like smoke. So here's our question. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had incredible faith in the face of death. When was the last time you were persecuted or perhaps made fun of? Or maybe you got a negative response for your faith, and then how did you respond? All right, well, I guess I'll go first. The truth is I haven't been, persecuted a lot.
Right,
I haven't really been made fun of for being a Christian since I was in high school. I mean, in high school, I carried a Bible around, and people would make fun of me for it, which, whatever. People in high school are going to make fun of you for any reason. You get a haircut, and...
It's true.
People are just jerks. So what's interesting, though, to me is that you never really know what people say about you when you're not around.
Yeah.
Usually. So I have a group of friends that I hung around with. These are non-Christians. And I have another friend who is a Christian that's also part of this group. And I don't want to give too much away because I don't want everybody to trace it back to them. But I was not in the room. There was a conversation being had about me, and my Christian friend later relayed the conversation to me. So they were talking about I think a TV show, and they said, "Oh, Luke would never watch that. You know that he's a prude. He's out of touch. He's like, kind of backwards. You can't say stuff like that around him. Like, don't even bring it up when he's around. So the Christian friend later was laughing at me, but I was a little offended. Like,
right.
Okay, I'm a pastor, but it's not like I'm naive to the ways of the world. I don't know
Right.
what's going on.
Yeah.
So it was interesting that their perception of me was because I work at a church,
Right.
I'm just totally out of touch with reality and people and how things really are. Like I need to be sheltered or something. Okay, our producer's nodding his head. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate that vote of confidence from you.
Almost to say he is a prude.
How about you, Andy? You get any persecution
you know
on Facebook or social media or anything
Interestingly enough, no. I'm not on social media. I'm pretty vocal. One time we had a, and this is probably why I don't get a lot of it on Facebook, but anyways, we had a winter retreat thing where I spoke on apologetics, and a girl who'd been a non-believer as pretty much her whole life gave her life to Christ because she found the moral argument for God's existence to be very, very powerful, and she surrendered to Jesus, and it was a really, really cool experience.
Cool.
We tweeted from it. We tweeted about it on the Vertical account on my own page, and instantly all these people I had never heard of, they probably were just searching atheist because I said an atheist just surrendered her life to Christ, and they were harassing us like crazy on Twitter and on my Twitter. And so what they typically want is a response. And I don't do that on social media unless it's like, I just don't do it. I made a promise to myself a long time ago. So I just blocked them all, and it just stopped happening. So there's that. But I think the best example would be back when I was in doing my undergrad at UT, and I was in criminal justice, and you'd be surprised at the way the professors would talk about faith in a class that had nothing to do with it.
It doesn't surprise me at all, man.
First day of one of my classes, one of my professors wrote on the board, man made in the image of God, comma, or ... God made in the image of man. And then we talked about it in a class that had nothing to do with it for the entire first lecture. And I was the only person in the room that was like, hold up. What are we doing? So I guess in a sense, but not personally, not really. No. Maybe I'm not doing it right or something then.
I got attacked on Twitter a few weeks ago.
I remember that.
This was at the first Josh Duggar scandal.
One. Yes.
But all I said, here's what I tweeted. I said, praying for Josh Duggar, sad situation. I had like 10 people that were going crazy. How could I pray for him? He's such a disgusting, blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
Which it's like, I can't pick who I'm going to pray for. I got to defend myself for praying for a
You
very
only pray for people
person.
who aren't bad.
Oh my gosh, seriously.
Yeah. They went nuts on you. That was hilarious. I wanted to favorite some of their tweets just to give you.
I should have retweeted them all.
You should have.
That would have been great. All right. Well, man, I see our time is coming to a close. We didn't even get to Daniel in the Lion's Den, which is just crazy.
Yeah, we talk too much.
If you are a child, you've probably heard the story of Daniel in the Lion's Den. If you are not familiar with it, check it out. It's in Daniel 6. It's a new king that's come in.
Yeah.
Again, he's standing up for his faith. He's praying very publicly to God and not to a false God.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, his life is in jeopardy. So check it out. If you heard the story as a child, I'd say revisit it as an adult, and it will make you feel better about the tiny bits of persecution that you may have to deal with in your life.
That's for sure. Yeah, guys, go back and read the whole book. Daniel's a great book. It has so many cool stories.
We couldn't get to the visions and the prophecies.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in there. And especially when you get to the prophecies, have some sort of like commentary or study notes. You can go to like any website, like what's the biggest one? Bible Hub. That one has a lot of commentaries on there, and just ask good questions. You can always email us some questions at podcast@cedarcreek.tv. Friend us on Facebook. And also you can just download, if you want to keep subscribing to the podcast, we would greatly appreciate it. And any feedback you guys might have. We love hearing from you guys all the time. It's super cool.
Cool. So evil is allowed to reign temporarily. We've seen evil in this book over and over. Keep in mind, though, that evil's days are numbered. Your Father, your Heavenly Father who loves you and cares about you, is in control. And has a plan, and he's coming back.
Definitely. Well, next week we're going to be talking about a really cool book. I love one of the chapters in this is one of my favorite chapters in the Bible. This book is Hosea. I'm very pumped about that.
It's going to be a good one.
See you guys.